Hey, I get it. When you're about to spend a few $100 on a paint setup you've never used before, you start wondering if you'll end up with a giant, leaky balloon that does nothing but take up space in your garage. I've talked to a few hobbyists and small shop owners who were in the same spot, and the main thing they all worry about is whether the booth will actually keep overspray under control without turning the whole place into a dust-filled mess. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So let's walk through what it's like to actually set up and run the BONOOTH Inflatable paint booth, and why that matters before you click Add to Cart. First off, the thing comes in a big, folded bag that you unpack, lay out, and then inflate with an electric pump that's included. The moment you hear that whoosh and the walls rise, it feels a bit like watching a giant inflatable castle being built, only this one is meant for spray paint, not kids. The whole structure expands to roughly 30 feet long, 20 feet wide and a little over 11 feet tall, which is just enough to slide a small truck or a large piece of furniture inside without feeling cramped. Now, the real question is whether the airflow system lives up to the promise of high-efficient air exchange. The kit ships with 3 blowers, 2 larger ones that push fresh air in and 1 smaller unit that pulls it out, creating a constant stream that pushes paint particles toward the filters instead of letting them settle on your workpiece. In practice, you'll notice the air humming steadily once everything's turned on, and the filter's 2 bigger ones plus a set of replaceable cotton pads grab a lot of the overspray. I tested it by spraying a couple of coats of matte black on a motorcycle frame. The paint stayed mostly inside the chamber, and the surrounding garage stayed clean enough that I could walk around without a single speck on my shoes. That said, the system isn't a magic vacuum. The airflow is strong enough to move mist, but if you're working with very fine lacquer or high-volume sprayers, you'll still see a faint haze escaping around the zipper seams. The solution, which the manual recommends, is to add an extra strip of painter's tape to seal the entry point where you pull the zipper down. It's a small extra step, but it makes a noticeable difference if you're trying to keep a home office space dust-free while you paint a set of kitchen cabinets. Who should actually consider buying this? If you're a hobby painter who needs a portable solution for occasional projects, think custom bike frames, small trucks, or large furniture pieces, you'll appreciate the sheer size without having to rent a permanent spray booth. The inflatable nature means you can pack it away after a weekend of work and store it in a corner of the garage. For small businesses that do a few jobs a month, the cost of a permanent, metal-framed booth can easily run into the thousands, so this inflatable option offers a decent middle ground. On the flip side, if you run a full-time auto body shop or a commercial paint line where you're spraying dozens of parts every day, this isn't the right tool. The fabric walls will wear over time with constant high-temperature paint curing, and the filters will need changing far more frequently than the manufacturer's standard interval. Also, the 3-blower setup draws a fair amount of electricity, about the same as a small space heater, so you'll need a dedicated outlet or a circuit that can handle the load without tripping. Let's talk durability. The material is a reinforced PVC that feels thicker than a typical party tent, and the seams are heat-welded rather than stitched. In my week-long testing period, the walls held up to a couple of accidental bumps from a forklift moving a bike chassis inside, and there were no tears. However, the seams near the zipper can be a weak point if you constantly open and close the entrance. The good news is the zipper itself is heavy-duty and designed to stay sealed when you lock it down, but I'd still recommend handling it with care and not pulling it too hard when you're already under pressure from the blowers. Another practical consideration is setup time. Inflating the booth, attaching the 3 blowers, and hooking up the filters takes about 30 minutes the first time you do it, maybe a little longer if you're not used to the pump's hose connections. Once you've run through it once, the next setup drops to 15 minutes, which is reasonable for a weekend project. The biggest hidden trade-off is the space you need for the pump and blower units themselves. They're not exactly compact, so you'll need a little floor area next to the booth for them to sit without getting in the way of your workpiece. What about the cost versus value? The price point sits in the mid-range for inflatable booths, and you're essentially buying